Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Birdsong. It's your host, as always, Kayuda, and in this episode, we are talking all things chocolate. So we have Carl Laz joining us. And Carl Laz is a qualified and passionate herbalist, sound practitioner, and intuitive healer, a modern day wizard, if you like, and some of us know him as the Chocolate Wizard. So for about 15 years, Carl has dedicated his life to deeply researching and exploring plant medicines and their application to body, mind, and spirit. He has visited many of the key sacred sites of England and Europe, gaining spiritual and practical knowledge from his experiences, which has allowed him to understand the diverse relationships between Western health and spiritual concepts and be able to offer holistic healing in this way. With a strong focus on the 5 elements, he continues to develop practical processes to recognize, ground, and integrate profound mystical experiences. He works and trains with a range of modalities, including Reiki 1, 2, and Master Teacher attunements, Acutonics, massage, flower essences, crystal healing, and of course, chocolate ceremonies, which is a fusion of herbal wisdom, sound, and chocolate. And his sound healings bring deep connection to the self through a range of instruments, including all kinds of crystal singing bowls, 9 quartz crystal singing bowls, Tibetan singing bowls, flutes, didgeridoo, pan drums, shakers, vocal chants, and singing. So this was a really fun episode to have, talking all things chocolate. I'm sure if you're a chocolate fan that you're going to find something insightful, valuable in this conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you are watching or listening to this from. Let's get straight into it. I trust you'll find value in this conversation to carry with you on your own path forward.
Well, like the name of your podcast, like spirit song, bird song.
Birdsong.
Same thing,
Yeah.
like waking up when the birds are awake, and then when the birds stop singing, it's like shut everything down. So
Sure.
it's a good vibe to be in. I'd like to be able to move into that more, but I find my creativity really comes when like the sun goes down. It's kind of like it's still a piece of getting that creativity harnessed at the right times. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Well, natural rhythms and getting more in sync with ourselves, our higher self, our soul, our heart, the language of the land, however we want to articulate it. Maybe we'll get into some more of that stuff as we go on. But to keep things rolling, man, I'm going to ask a question, and I ask all of my guests this particular question. It's somewhat of a variant depending on who I'm talking to, but I would love to hear a little bit about your relationship to the sacred, and then we can snowball on from there. So, I mean, what does the sacred mean to you, and how do you honor the sacred in day-to-day life?
That's a great question.
And it's a big question, and you can take it whichever way you feel fit.
Well, I love the way that even that question brings this like moment of pause and this moment of present in just the wording of it. And I feel like for me, it's coming back to being present to what's happening now. That's essentially for me what the sacred means. So there's a number of different things that I would do to bring myself into the present, whether that's remembering my breath or remembering just to like be in my eyes, looking through them instead of just, observing everything. And then there's for me, the sacred, there's a piece there of the sacred and the secrets merging in. And within that, there's this thing around having secrets where if you have a secret and I say I have a secret, you want to know about it, but you're also like really present with it. So opposed from it just being like spread out in the Kybalion, they say don't cast pearl to swine, which isn't like having a go at anyone. It's just saying, well, why throw very high level information or sacred information at someone who can't receive it? So for me, it's really tapping. I've always been tapping into a way that it's the sacred is non-dogmatic to me. The closest I relate to the foundation of what the sacred is our breath, like the breath that flows through us. That breath that's breathing us when we're not paying attention to our breath. So for me, that's been a big journey in learning more and more about breath and breath work, and sharing that with others and teaching others, knowing that I'll continuously be learning. And for me, the plants have definitely played a role, a big role, or for the last 15 years, been researching, exploring plants, from herbal medicines to shamanic plants to food and how it grows. And that in itself, I find like the sacred things for me are the things that I can hold on to, or the things that I can connect into when nothing else makes sense. So when when everything on the outside doesn't make sense, it's like, well, what is real? And for me, it always comes down to the earth and my breath, and then I can create everything from there. So really remembering and coming back to those things. I guess that's what comes up for me when I speak about sacred. And incorporating sound and song is another one to like really tap into the vibratory nature of reality as well, you know. So those sacred bits are those things that we can, for me, what I can connect to, that reminds me that we're dreaming, and we get to dream this dream. So yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I'll share about that piece. I have like interesting dynamics with the whole like spiritual, conscious, sacred, because I do dance. Like as a chocolate wizard, I try to dance between these big words while I do kind of embody them at the same time. In that, still like them to be playful and not so serious, and like I don't attach to any specific lineage besides being human, and like a long line of lineage of humans working out how to live, you know. So yeah, even that word, I can feel myself kind of like dancing around it. But yeah, I feel like there's this piece around the sacred pieces is really exploring within myself as well, the secrets. So really uncovering parts of myself that have been secret to others, and also maybe secret to myself, that feels like it starts to unravel. And I've been sitting a lot recently with like two things that I have done in the past that I've kind of not shamed, but not allowed to come to the surface. And that is like having an addictive personality and actually being quite lazy. And just going like, wow, those are two things. And like really sitting with them and tapping into them and going, okay, wow, well, actually for me, having an addictive personality is great, because I tap into things, and I go really, really deep into something, and I really get into it. And from that space, I can also have compassion with people who are addicted to things, and see that it's about the relationship with whatever it is that we're addicted to. So we could be addicted to going to the gym for that like endorphin hit, or to tobacco, or to heroin, or to sex, or any of these things, and really tapping into that addictive nature isn't what's bad. It's actually what comes from the relationships. So for me, I also bring in sacredness to the things that I do, especially when I feel that, I really like this pleasurable thing. Let's bring it into as much of a sacred ritual, bring presence to it. And then I find they just fall away. So, and the other is the laziness, which is like, I always just try to find the best way to do something that's the easiest and the quickest, so that it's effortless at the times when I feel like I'm too busy or I don't have time. Then I can be like, I can just drop into that. It's like doing 5 minutes of meditation, right? Telling someone to do, even if it's too much, do a 1 minute meditation, like microdose on meditation. And then that 1 minute is going to lead into 2 minutes, which will lead into 3 minutes, like, and just starting there, instead of going, you must do 1 hour of Vipassana meditation twice a day. And someone's like, fuck that, I can't do that. You know? the sacred, brings up that. So it really starts to dig into that relationship with self and the earth. For me, that would be, if I was to fine tune it, it's like, a deeper connection with myself and the earth, and then with others and the earth. So always keeping that connection flowing and growing from that space.
Yeah, I love that, man. And we certainly share similar sentiments when it comes to our reflections and our relationship with the sacred. And one of the things that I've loved tapping into when it comes to your field and what you're putting out there is, I just love the way that you seem to tap into this flow when you're speaking. And I love listening to the little tangents that you go on whenever you're, it's just cool to like almost follow this weave through time and space and this direction that you're going. Is just really, really interesting. I love seeing the way that your mind works and how you're tying in all these ideas. There's so much there that I would love to unpack, but we would be talking for hours. So I want to get onto one of the main things that I want to explore with you. And as I mentioned to you, that is chocolate. And perhaps more specifically, since we've touched on the sacred, chocolate as a sacrament, and with all of the, say, pathways and tributaries that spring off from there. So, people that know you, well, me knowing you, as one of your roles, it's the chocolate wizard. So, look, I mean, where do we start with this, man? Perhaps a question to springboard off from is, what is a chocolate wizard?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually just, I started a podcast recently called the Cacao Codes. It's on Spotify.
Okay,
and the first one I did was actually talked about what a chocolate wizard is. So I can fine tune that. And really, it's interesting because I chose to call myself a wizard at a time where I'm already a qualified herbalist. I had started my study in alchemy, and I had people saying, "Oh, you're a chocolate alchemist." And just for me, that the openness of saying those words, and also back into relation to the sacred and the secrets, the things that are really sacred are secrets. So to actually be embodying that, and the path of alchemy is a lifetime thing. So, but I actually remember having this meeting with one of my mentors, which is a herbal and alchemy mentor of mine. And he shared the story with me of when he was looking through, when his mother passed away, he was looking through all these old boxes from her storage and found this video, like a cassette tape, and he played it, and it was of him and her talking. And she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "I want to be a wizard." And he said, how interesting is that now I'm a herbalist, I have like the Celtic roots, studying the alchemy. And he started sharing, and he said the etymology of what a wizard is someone who seeks wisdom, who shares wisdom, and holds counsel for wisdom. And it was in that moment that I was like, I'm a wizard. And the chocolate wizard piece is really, first and foremost, is because it's fun. So a chocolate wizard has fun with chocolate, and then it is about seeking that wisdom of chocolate, sharing that wisdom of chocolate, and holding the counsel for the wisdom of chocolate, which chocolate being, I'm guessing we're going to talk more into this, but also being a sacred sacrament, and it comes from a sacred plant. So as a wizard, I like to share sophisticated magic. So it's not just the ancient, it's how it comes into today's times. So there's certain pieces that I've connected in with, or like you were saying before, when I speak and I go down tangents of like just bringing things together. So it's part of the magic is in with chocolate. And the reason it's a chocolate wizard and not a cacao wizard is because linguistically, for me, how I see it is chocolate's more receptive to everyone. So everyone can connect with chocolate as something from their childhood of love. Whereas when it comes to cacao, not many people actually know about it. I mean, in the bubble that I'm in, like everyone knows about it and everyone's serving it and doing their things. But outside of that bubble, there's like we're probably like 6% or 7% of the population that knows what cacao is. So I do like to really bring herbs to the plate for everyone. And that's actually where my herbal chocolate journey began. I was like, oh, wow, herbs in chocolate makes sense because it's just a synergistic infusion of chocolate with herbs. And what a better way to create a platform for the herbs to shine, where people's awareness is already there. There's a type of magic in chocolate. Just when you go, hey, do you want some chocolate? People are like, yes, you know. They're like, I'm a herbalist and I can talk about herbs. In the bubble, there's a lot of people that be like, yeah, talk to me about herbs. Whereas in general, if I'm like, oh, I've got some herbal chocolate, people are like, oh, chocolate, and then you can talk about the herbs. So it's a type of magic to get people to also learn more about the plants and the earth. So as a chocolate wizard, that's the role. I'm constantly on this seeking. So chocolate's continuously been taking me on a journey, deeper and deeper levels. And then the sharing in and of itself is a journey as well, to be able to share this wisdom with people and watch it grow. And then I am actually, I've moved into holding initiations, like chocolate dreaming initiations, which I feel is more that council where we can all sit together and go deeper into the process as well. So what is a chocolate wizard? It's kind of like law, right? LOE. It's a living wisdom. So I'm like a living body of wisdom that's ever growing and expanding into new ways. So yeah.
Cool. Yes, there's a few things there that I want to touch on in a moment for sure. The chocolate dreaming initiations and rituals, the herbal alchemical creations that are intertwined with chocolate. But I mean, one of the things that kind of struck me that I hadn't really become super aware of just came recently, and I was like, whoa, chocolate is actually part of the plant path. Like when we're engaging and consuming chocolate, we're stepping into the plant path, whether unconsciously or consciously or unintentionally, intentionally. Like it's probably not something that many people stop to think about when they're consuming or working with chocolate. It's like, this is plants right here. It can be plant medicine as well. Yeah. And it kind of blew my own mind when I thought of that. I was like, why have I never thought about that before? And I mean, how many things are there that are like, well, I mean, I would love for you to expand on this, this idea or this level of awareness that when we're engaging with chocolate, we're engaging with plants.
Yeah, thank you. It's a piece that did drop in for me as well. And one of the first like memories I remember of chocolate is actually my mum buying me chocolate like every Valentine's Day. I get little love heart chocolates, and there's that in and of itself that felt like a ritual, you know. So it's like on that date I knew, oh, I'm going to get some chocolate and I'm going to sit around, and it's going to be like it's a process in and of itself. And as far as a plant medicine, I feel, well, really chocolate is a mediator. It's a mediator similar to tobacco or cacao, where it's like a mediator or coca of this like horizontal plane. I see it. So it really can ground us in on this horizontal plane, whereas you got like the cactuses, which will like take you right up, and the vines take you down like deep. But this plant as a plant medicine and as a consciousness has already spread its seed to every corner of the globe and positioned itself in everyone's hearts. And what I found from utilizing chocolate as well is if you don't use it with intention, it just makes you feel good. It's fine. So that's essentially on masses. We've been doing mass ceremonies since we were young, on like Valentine's Day, on Easter, on Christmas. And it just so happens that these like Christian religions, that's when we were all eating chocolate together as a family in the name of love, really, and family. So it's just kind of just been simmering in there, being like, yeah, it's love. We don't really need to speak it. There's other rituals that are happening. So, but as we move into the awareness of that it is a sacrament and using it with intention, that's where its role clicks more into aligning one with their path. So it takes you on your journey. The way that I see it is there's other plant medicines where we'll have them and we'll go on these big journeys, and we've got to come back and we need to integrate, you know, really start pulling parts of ourselves back in whatever way it is how do we come back into the world? How do we put ourselves back together in a way? Whereas with chocolate, she's already positioned herself like smack bang in society, boom, everywhere, Cadbury's bars in the stores, you know, everywhere around us. So it is actually, when we're using it with intention, she just starts to align us with our path. So it's this activation of this field, which we're all, almost all, pretty much, I'm sure everyone's eaten chocolate within our little containers as well. So for me, that's part of the dreaming, is that when we use it with intention, it starts to align our dreaming. And I feel like it's a beautiful gateway, because I see it into a gateway into the other plant realms. And I can share a story with you about, which I think you might really appreciate. I have kind of lost the specificness of this question. If it was towards society, I'm like, as I started into the chocolate path, I kind of get.
No, I like where you're going. Yeah, I'd love to hear
away.
the story, mate.
Okay, cool. So when I started doing chocolate, I was in it for a while, and I was also running a sacred space at Rainbow Serpent, which is in Victoria, where you are, called the Elemental Temple. It was the sacred space, pretty much for the whole festival. And over those 3 years that I ran that space before I passed it on, well, I didn't take any psychedelics at the festivals, or any drugs at all, actually. I think I had some hape and some chocolate. That was like, those are like my two allies, just keep me grounded. And what I noticed was, when I was there, when I was hanging out with different people doing different things, I'd have my chocolate, I'd do my cacao ceremony in my elemental temple, you know, connecting with the elements. And I'd go hang out with some mates that are having a spliff, and I'd just be like stoned with them, you know. I'd just be like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then be like, oh yeah, that's right, hear the call. And I'd be like, cool, it's time to just go check on the temple again and weave back in. And later that night, I'd be on some mates who are like, you know, on some MDMA or cactus, and just like really like in their hearts, boom, 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 and just like being able to dance with them and have fun, and then also pop out of the bubble again. You know, that connection was still able to call me out. Or then into my friends who are a bit more into like the tryptamines or the mushrooms, you know, and just get really like in that space of where they're at and being able to have those conversations, and then also being able to pull myself out again and go back in. And after the 3 years were done, well, those ones, I remember going to a friend's place, and they had just harvested some mushrooms, and I got some from them, and I made a small batch of chocolate with them. And when I set it and I put them in the fridge, I just licked the bowl. I literally just went like, probably been, I don't know how long it had been since I had mushrooms. But I literally just touched it, and on my tongue tasted it. I was like, you know, so delicious. And straight away it was like, sit down. And I went and sat down, and for like it must have been like 2 hours, I just sat in meditation, and there was this conversation going on. I was like, the mushrooms came in, and the cacao is there, and there's this conversation being translated between the spirit of cacao and the mushrooms. And it was this reflecting, the mushrooms are able to speak to the cacao in a way that cacao has such, like I have such a deep relationship with them. And this is what I feel all of us in society do have, this relationship, and we can deepen this relationship with cacao. And she speaks our language, and she speaks the plant's language. So there's this conversation going on. Oh, when you started taking mushrooms and picking them like this is what that meant. And these experiences meant this. And then here's the path moving forward. And this is what we're here to do, and like how to operate. And I also saw cacao's version of that, which is when someone's got a connection with the cacao and they approach another plant, or cacao will either call in that plant, guide them what to do next, or when that plant comes in, it's a translator. So it can translate, hey, this is Kyle. Kyle's currently doing this. I've been working with him. Say the mushrooms come in, or Aya comes in, or the cactus comes in. It's like, this is Kyle, and this is what he's currently been doing. It's kind of like they've got a checkboard going like, this is the current state of where Kyle's at. Okay, cool. Let's open this up. And it can just be a direct connection, and the plants can go in and teach, opposed to having to clean up. So this is a piece that around the same time I got this like connection piece. It wasn't like the plants are upset or angry, because I don't feel like there is an emotional piece to the plants, but it was kind of like there was this energy of like boredom with people showing up in ceremony spaces unprepared, kind of like in rags and needing to be cleaned up, opposed to like the plants are there to teach us and actually have all this wisdom, and we show up like scruffs and pretty much just get sent to go have a shower and, you know, like vomit the whole time or shit ourselves. And Chocolate's at peace, going like, well, here's the gateway. If you respect me, you can come into the gates of wisdom, and if you don't, cool, just keep having fun, you know, just keep enjoying life, going over there. You're not going to have a bad experience. So I feel it's cool sharing this again, actually. Like this piece is a piece of like Chocolate's role, really. And it's already a sacrament that we all can relate to. And it's a sacrament that was used by ancients like the Maya, Aztecs, Incas already as a sacrament. And we are like an emerging civilization. And what a great sacrament for us to be deepening our connection with. And I do believe that it went past Maya and Aztec. Like before that, it was being used as well. So I think it was already being traded in those times. So I don't think those are the origins, which also ties back into the chocolate dreaming. Like I still believe that all of our history is a lie, including the history that we believe is a lie. So that starts to touch onto this is my dreaming, and even the history we learn in history books, I believe is a lie. Even the ancient history of everyone that says that these ancient tribes did this and this is a thing, I also think that that's a lie. So it brings it back into this present moment is real, and everything else is a lie, really. So
there's a lot
like,
there, man.
I feel when I speak like that, sometimes I feel I need to cover all the bases, because I'm not actually attacking anyone. I'm just like, yeah, that's just the dreaming, to be able to freely create with that and choose the story, choose the dreaming, choose what's real from a space of sitting on the earth, breathing.
Yeah, again, there's a few threads that I hopefully will remember to come back to. One of them is doing a little bit more exploration around like the various contexts and the intentions for working with chocolate, and then also the sacramental use, maybe in comparison to just the regular everyday use, and the different types of chocolate, and how perhaps, I don't know what your perspective is here, but not all chocolates may be created equal because there's not the same level of intention going into the creation of chocolates perhaps. And it's like people may be listening to us talk about chocolate, and there may be that preconceived notion or that level of conditioning that's like, wait, isn't chocolate unhealthy for us? Isn't chocolate full of sugar and chemicals? Like, especially if we're talking about maybe like whatever, a Snickers or a Cadbury bar compared to maybe some high grade chocolate. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on first is like this whole plant intelligence piece, like plants perhaps having their own agenda and slipping their way into human consciousness in one way or another. And they could be assisting us in aligning us as a species back into harmony with ourselves as a species, and back into harmony with our planet and the plants and everything else on here. But a comment from reflecting upon your story is that it's really cool that you experienced that experience and really had that kind of that deep connection to this wisdom that's being passed on. Because I know you're speaking about everything that we know about, or a lot of what we know about history and traditional or indigenous use of just, or perhaps not the use, but their way of living and way of life. Like, how do we know what we're being taught or what's in the history books is actually legitimate? But I've certainly come across this level of awareness before where they're talking about chocolate in this way, as in it's kind of like a gatekeeper, if you will, to use the language that you use. So it's interesting to note that you've had that experience of direct communication with the chocolate and in conjunction with the mushrooms as well. And also this piece of ancient wisdom that does say that it is some form of gatekeeper into something else. So yeah, there's no question there. It's kind of just reflections after hearing you talk.
Great, thank you, man. Yeah, I really appreciate the reflection as well. Like I got a lot from that.
So, I mean, what's your take then? What's your deeper take when it comes to plant intelligence and having their own agenda?
In again, I'll just say in my dreaming, the way I see it is like spirit becomes manifest in a bacterial form. So these bacteria could have just been floating through space and then like came together and like had a cosmic orgasm and created more molecules and elements and things. And over years and years and years, however many, whatever it is, then the right condition for a planet was there with water. And then from there, it's like these cells duplicated and created more just for creation's sake into like animals and or into plants first. So we start with plants because then there's animals and humans. But I feel like essentially when there's the planet and there's the sun, these bacteria created plants to harness the sun, right? To get the maximum exposure of the energy. It's all about like harnessing energy essentially. And from there, then being able to, cool, we have all this extra energy and we have these plants, and then there's like animals on a grander scale. It's like the animals are almost like the flowers of the planet, being like, wow, look, pretty colors and songs. And from there, once you got that, then humans were created from these bacterial isms, right? And before the bacterial isms, we just have vibrating particles. So it's more alive and conscious, like the mitochondria. So from there, like humans are like the fruiting bodies, right? So the fruiting bodies being conscious and have the ability to seed consciousness. So to create a whole new realm. And I feel like that's kind of like the level that we're on. So you've got plants, animals, people, or humans. And then, yeah, there's this like direct link between whatever this bacteria is or this like essence communicating through it and then working with humans. Well, they work with animals by attracting the animals to their flowers and pollinating them and getting them to eat the fruit and spreading their seeds. So I'd say that would be what a plant's main agenda would be. Same as like, if you look on a cellular level, what our mitochondria look at, and it's like food, fear, and fucking, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, make sure you're getting enough food, reproducing, and make sure you're safe. So the plants would be doing a similar role in the dreaming. So I do feel like there's different levels of where these plants situate themselves and how they teach humans to cultivate them and to prepare them. So when we were talking before about bad chocolate or good chocolate or whatever it is, I don't believe there's any bad chocolate because it's all from the same tree with that same connection. But it's the corruption around it. So yes, that is a piece, but I also feel like people can still have a chocolate dreaming experience with a piece of Cadbury's if they're on their way to the desert and there's only a corner store and the only cacao they're going to be able to get before they go in is a Cadbury's bar or a Mars bar. They can still take it and just, you don't even need a lot. So there's that scale. And then there's like the art of making chocolate. So the roasting of it, the widowing. When you look at bean to bar, which in Melbourne, there's actually a lot of bean to bar chocolate makers there. Whenever I go to Melbourne, I just walk through the town buying craft beer and craft chocolate is what I really love. And that is very different to say the raw chocolate market, which almost isn't even chocolate when you look at a lot of them that have coconut oil and stuff in them. So it's like what's good and what's bad. But really for me, the best chocolate is when it is like bean to bar. So you know where the beans are from, where they've been harvested, then that process of how they've been made, roasted at the right temperature. Because over roasted cacao is what they say, like loses the nutrients, loses the flavor profile and all those things. But under roasted or raw chocolate still doesn't have the flavor profiles and might not have active, we might not be able to fully digest the nutrients that are in it. And probably there's traces of fungus that are still on those particles because of the fermentation process. So that could be equally as bad as having like the commercially made chocolate. So there's this fine line between like really well-made chocolate. And yeah, there's also this, like, for example, like Belgian chocolates, really well-made chocolate, good flavor profile. Yes, they do still put sugar in it, but when you're really looking at those 70 to 80% chocolates, there's not that much sugar in it. And if you're eating that much chocolate to be affected by that sugar, you're really needing to look into that relationship anyway. But then there's the bean to bar, which, I mean, that's still using sugar for the flavor profile. So I see on that journey, when we're going to how chocolate flows in, I see it as this like bitter bean, right, that was in the forest. And in the dreaming, my version, it's like when there was the Spanish Inquisition, you know, the Catholics went in there and like killed a whole bunch of different tribes. And what they had with them was a bunch of botanists known as, what is it? The Franciscan order, which is like from Saint Francis of Assisi. Like there's a whole lot of things, but essentially that order was known as like to have a lot of botanists. So when you go to a lot of ancient Catholic churches and stuff, you find that they have herb gardens and stuff, because the monks did keep that wisdom alive. But where did they get it all from in the first place? It was probably after they killed like all the witches and the Celtics and the Druids and all these other places. So anyway, so discovering this plant in there that they named Theobroma cacao, the food of the gods. So Theo being God and Broma being food, from a scientist botanist. And then how did that plant from there getting discovered? One, the plant's like, I am the food of the gods. So scientist is like, food of the gods. This feels really weird to be saying, like, even in those times. And then along the path, meeting with sugar. So this grass, right? This grass that's like taken over most of the planet. And the way that I see sugar is that we also need to form an allyship with it, because people like the British colonials, this colony, and that's like colonizing, kind of like a fungus, carried sugar with it. They chopped down all the trees, bastards, and then planted sugar. But it was like this fuel that actually fueled how it took over so much of the planet, and it's still all around us. So when cacao met in with sugar, it's when it actually got adopted more. I was like, oh, this isn't just bitter. Oh, this is sweet now. And then this is another little twist of when milk got added to it. There's a process when milk became powdered, and it was like the doctor's name or the scientist's name was something Nestle. So Nestle was actually named after a scientist who powdered the milk. So when that got mixed in with the chocolate, that's when it just went crazy, like everywhere. And 50% chocolate is the most consumed chocolate on the planet. So when people do go into like dairy's bad and sugar's bad, I'm like, chocolate's got its own agenda. Like, maybe it's bad for you, but don't say this is bad for the chocolate or disrespectful for the chocolate, because it's helped that chocolate, that cacao plant, to have its seeds spread to all the different places. And then now that there's like different things going on with like funguses eating cacao and like cacao dying in Africa and Bali, there's like all these diseases. It is bringing humans to a new awareness of how to grow this plant and how to connect with this plant, which then is reflected in society now. How many people are drinking cacao? You know, everyone's serving it, and then there's all these people going, you can't serve it that way, you got to serve it this way. And it's kind of like, hang on a second, like, who said that we have to serve it any particular way? So I feel like the plant consciousness is constantly tapping into the field when it's needed, like when we need something. And right now, what I feel like we're needing is for everyone to be having a really good excuse to be doing ceremony in whatever capacity it is. And that piece with chocolate is like, you could do it like in any moment. So for me, with the chocolate dreaming, I have a nano ceremony, a micro ceremony, and then a full ceremony. And then there's the full initiation. So it's in any moment. For me, I've known this since the beginning. Any moment we should be able to have the means to go into ceremony, because really it's just reminding us that like life is a prayer, life is ceremony. So and then we like, I feel like I'd go into too many tangents speaking about other like allies we both have, whether it's tobacco or or like cactuses. It's like that's a whole nother multi-leveled processes. And also within that, I feel like a lot of visionaries get lost in those spaces and forget about being here. So cacao is also that draw card of just bringing it back to that connection, and bringing us back into the moment, back into our bodies and feeling it in our bodies, because cacao is that expanding our hearts, opening our intuition, and grounding us into the earth. And if it doesn't do one of three of those things, then like it's really refining that intention and that presence with it. So for me, I have my own ritual, if you like, around it, which is very adaptable. And I make it just like it. Just like chocolate's really adaptable. You can put pretty much anything in chocolate and it's gonna be great, you know?
Okay. That was great, man. There's so many great pieces in there. You know what I really loved? Many pieces that I loved about that, but in particular, when you're speaking about the polarity of whether we see something as good or bad, and it's often through this anthropocentric lens, but it's like, wait a second, like what sugar and milk is fantastic for chocolate because it's allowed chocolate to proliferate on this worldwide level and seed itself into the hearts and the minds, the consciousness of the planet, and allow for that gateway to open and expand for people to come into that frequency, if you will, of the heart consciousness or the love consciousness, or just, opening up and being more warm and welcoming. So that's such a great perspective to hold.
It's the sacred grass of sugar and the sacred milk from the sacred cow. The holy cows, the holy shit. Cows give us so much magic, and it's just another piece, let alone like the mushrooms or ghee for like medicinal herbal things, to creamifying up the chocolate realms. So
well, I mean, you touched on this intermingling between various herbs and chocolate. I would love for you to speak a little bit more on this, because this is not something that I've come across a great deal. I mean, it's not like I go to any regular stores and there are many different types of chocolate blended with things. I mean, like the most outrageous intermingling might be chocolate covered almonds down at the health food store. But when it comes to like chocolate infused with herbs, it's not something that I come across all that often.
Yeah, great. Thanks, man. That's a really good question, because it's come into my field recently, because I have had a retail chocolate company, and now I have like a more exclusive. I have a secret chocolate society, and I just send humans boxes of chocolate quarterly, based on what we've just been speaking about, that presence and that attention on it. But really, when I began the journey of chocolate with herbs, it was when I first made chocolate. I saw chocolate for the first time as like cacao powder, cacao butter, as its separate parts, but it looked just like the herbs that I would mix together into teas, whether it was powders, because I worked at Happy Hives for like 7 years while studying my bachelor in health science. So I was working with tinctures and powders, plus I had all these teas and just surrounded by lots of herbs. And when that was the first time I saw chocolate as a herb, and I was like, oh, that is a herb, and I should start using it like that instead of just like a superfood that I put on my cereal. And noticing that, starting to mix essentially it's the art of synergy. So a synergistic preparation or blend is when you can mix two plants that have similar effects, and when you mix them together, that effect is greater. That's essentially a synergistic blend. So for me, mixing herbs with it was doing that. Like if I wanted a more loving aphrodisiac blend, you can add Damiana or more vanilla, or things like ashwagandha, mucuna. It's going to give that more sexy feel. Or if you're wanting more energy, you can also bring in the guarana. You can bring in, what else would I put in for energy? I use like rhodiola. So that art of blending herbs with chocolate does come from a general experience of plants already that harmonize in it, and again with the intention for potency. But when we look at chocolate as it's like effects on the body, it's a arterial dilator. So it dilates our arteries, which means there's more blood pumping through our bodies when we eat chocolate, which if chocolate's eaten with something else, there's more blood pumping. Whatever else we ate is also getting pumped to wherever it needs to go quicker. So it amplifies it. Kind of like, I mix ginger in my tinctures and my herbal medicine tinctures because it gets the circulation pumping. So it moves things where it needs to go quicker. So essentially chocolate is that container, and it holds the other herbs and distributes them right on that physical level, really.
Yeah.
And then, well, like I said before, I touched on with the mushrooms and the cacao, there is this, I call it phytochemysticism, which is, you like that? It's a good word.
Yeah, that's cool.
So this is essentially phyto is like phytochemistry is the chemistry makeup of plants. And then mysticism is obviously mystical, spiritual. So phytochemysticism is how the chemical structures of the plants connect in with their spiritual natures, which is what we were talking about before with like plant intelligence. And essentially it's based on like as above, so below. So when we look at molecules to spirit, similar to how I spoke about like bacteria being like the first stage of spirit. So if plants have similar chemical structures, their spirits communicate on a similar level. So a good like similar example of this is like chocolate coated coffee beans, or coffee and chocolate being together. There's theobromine in chocolate and there's caffeine in coffee, and that is methylxanthines is their chemical class. So they're both theobromine and caffeine go into the class of methylxanthines. So that communication of those plants is there. And this happens in the tryptamine realms, the phenylethylamine realms, the cannabinoid realms. So chocolate in itself has this ability to merge with many, many different plants. And I haven't gone down into the nutrient content and what nutrients match up with other foods like almonds. There's probably a deep connection in with that as well as to why it tastes so good. And there's that connection as well. So I think that answers your question. There's a bit more in there. It's a big,
man, that's really interesting. So what I'm thinking about is not only is there this physiological response that's happening in the body if we are amplifying the effects of cacao or chocolate when we're adding in herbs, but we can also get that perhaps what do we want to call it? Psycho-spiritual, psycho-emotional. This also ties into the physiological as well when we are placing greater intention into how it is that we're engaging with the chocolate or the cacao, because we're amplifying the energetic state of whatever it is that we're creating or calling into our lives. So it's kind of like I'm seeing chocolate more as like this multi-dimensional ally that can assist us in many different ways.
Yeah, totally.
That's cool.
That's exactly it. And if from the time when I started making chocolate, like 2013, and straight away was making herbal chocolate from the beginning to now, there is actually a number of different brands making herbal chocolate around the world. And when I first started making, I was like, I can't be the only one to like be doing this. And the only person who was doing it back then was David Wolf, was working with a guy to be making like sacred chocolate or something at that time. And now it's everywhere. So it's curious, even when you say, oh, I haven't heard much about or experienced much of the chocolate infused with herbs, I was like, wow, like it's a reminder, because in my reality, it's so alive. Like there's so many, like I go to the shops and I'm kind of like scanning the chocolate being like, okay, cool. There's some cool chocolate brands like Loco Love out there on the shelves that are having their herbs, they have herbs in it. And it's expanding. And now that I've been tapping into making cacao infused with herbs as well, it's interesting to see how that's also a market that people are getting more ready for this wisdom to be shared. And I feel like there's still first that foundation of understanding that there's more to chocolate than just a Cadbury's bar. Or there's more to cacao than just drinking hot chocolate, or you know, there's so much more for people, and it's always going to take us deeper into ourselves. So I think the next step will be more people doing ceremonies for themselves rather than having to go to a ceremony. And I feel like with each product that's made or ceremony you go to, it is about who's that person that you're sitting with. It's like if you, in any ceremony, when you're sitting with the shaman, it's like the maestro, you're essentially in the field of that person, which does navigate the experience you're going to be having. So I see all the things being valid of like, is someone qualified? Is someone not qualified? But again, you can't really go wrong with chocolate. Chocolate's not going to make anyone do anything that they're not meant to do. It's a good teacher. So within that, it can open up, well, maybe I shouldn't be sitting with that person, or maybe I should go sit there, or maybe I should be doing it by myself. Whereas I feel like the world of plants can really affect our consciousness as well. So we can go to certain ceremonies and think, oh, this is how it's meant to be. But really the space is being created in a certain way for us to be perceiving what we're seeing, you know? So yeah, I think that's, so it's a beautiful way, again, with the synergy of the herbs in it. Yes, like you're saying, it is about the intention that's put into it. So it can look at the actual ingredients, but then the intention's the process. So what is the process around how you're consuming it? And I feel like within the dreaming that what I've noticed is the process in which I make the chocolate, and I have over the 7 years, is now in the chocolate. And if they're just based on, even if I'm showing somebody else how to make the chocolate and I haven't touched it, it's still there because it's in the field of that process. And that's also where like there's another level of magic that comes in to how plants respond. Kind of like how a plant, if you're thinking about one of your plants in your garden now, it's feeling you, and it would start to like be more energized just because you're thinking about it. It's the same with plant preparations. So
yeah. So one thing that I would love to have you speak on is your chocolate dreaming rituals. And I'd also love for you to give a little bit more insight into some of how you ritualize chocolate, or your ritualistic use with chocolate. Maybe that might provide some insight to our listeners or our viewers that don't really have ritualistic practices, and maybe they want to incorporate some of that. So I would love to have you speak on some of that. I'm also curious to know about your personal experience when it comes to the cultivation of our intuitive capabilities when it comes to working with chocolate. But before we get into those, do you know much about the esoteric foundations of how chocolate has been used in the past?
Esoteric foundations.
Or esoteric connotations, any kind of, I guess, what we might consider the spiritual mysticism, and any of these kind of branches of mysticism that deal with chocolate.
Yep. So on my path of seeking the wisdom, pieces that I first came across was like the uses being a food, a medicine, a sacrament, and a currency. And then looking deeper into it, there is this reverence of it being used for magic, you know, so having a magical quality to it. And as far as I know, the foundations would also be around that heart expansion, that intuition, and that grounding. But as far as a solid lineage of what cacao has been used for, it's only in the last 2 years that I've started hearing more about like Mayan cacao, like not shamans, but that cacao lineage, which is the Mayan in Guatemala. And it's only recent like that I discovered that. It's only been word of mouth. So I haven't really gone to sit with exactly who these cultures are. Like I know that they're sitting with it, and I'm not sure if it has been something that's continuously been used, or if it's something that got readopted after there was that American cacao shaman Keith, who's like Keith Cacao. He's initiated so many people into his cacao version of using cacao, but that's not from Guatemala. Like, so when it does come down to the foundation, I'm not sure if that area started to reinvigorate. They're bringing their processes back in with it because there was the movement for it, or if it has been kept and passed down. So, as far as I know, it would be, it would be towards intuition and meditation and for different forms of healing, which is similar to most plant medicine. So when you say esoteric foundations, it's kind of like, if I look at ayahuasca as its esoteric foundation, it's like it goes deep into the root causes of stuff and digs it up, whereas cactuses is more like having your spine straight and get things done and go, you know. And mushrooms are like reprogramming our personalities, you know. So cacao would just be really bringing us into our hearts as a foundation of it. But as far as like an esoteric foundation, that's where I was. My inner wizard's like, oh, it's all a lie anyway.
Yeah,
No,
totally. Well, and you mentioned before that you suspect that any kind of traditional use would predate what is the common awareness that it's springboarded out of Mayan or Aztec or civilization.
Yeah, and I mean, and then if you look at current day uses, it's like what's really been adopted is cacao with sound and breath work. And if you look at breath work, it is an altered state in itself. And then the cacao and dancing in and of itself is a like ancient mystical teaching that would only get taught to like, you know, high levels of the secret societies as well, or the secret mystery schools. So it's amplifying what already is what I would see it as. And that's just touching. I still think we're just touching. I still think my wisdom is just touching on the full potential of what this plant is bringing in. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, we see the emergence of working with cacao or chocolate in conjunction with these modalities such as breathwork or dancing and music. But perhaps these are just rehashings of what has already been in the past. And this has already been seeded into our consciousness thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of years ago. And as we as a species are waking up, we're just tapping back into that field.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I see cacao, it's like this, that's why I have a secret chocolate society, is because we can actually be utilizing these mystery school teachings and sacraments and doing ceremony anywhere. Like with a piece of chocolate, you can do it anywhere. You can do it in between a business meeting, or you can do it on a bus and no one ever knows. And you can still be completely fine in the horizontal plane as you go along, be doing magic with it. So hence why the sophisticated magic that I bring forth as a chocolate wizard, because you can be in I could be in like a cellar door at a big winery somewhere, or I could sit under a cacao bush in Peru and do a ceremony. Either way, but I also want to have access to there's different experiences we can have when you're having really fine chocolate and fine wine, you know, just little bits of it, not overindulging, but those qualities that can come forth from that refinement and being like, the person that made this really loves the process of it, you know? So yeah, it's kind of like this interesting loop where we do have in Australia only recently bean to bar chocolate makers making really good bean to bar. The chocolates that I make, I get really high quality Belgium chocolate, and then I infuse the herbs with it, because my main thing is really the herbs and the infusion process. So instead of getting caught up with that whole other side of it, they're going to be a passion project. I just don't have all the time for that now. But when I go to buy chocolate from somewhere, it'll be from a craft chocolate maker. Similar to like I have friends who have breweries. Like I have multiple friends at breweries, and I'm going to drink a beer, I'll go catch up with one of my mates who brew the beer. Even if they didn't physically brew it, I'm sitting with them and I know that their vibration is in that brewery, and I drink the beer, and there's a connection with the culture. So it also creates this culture and this inner connection for us all. Kind of like, yeah, sitting in circle and drinking cacao, or sitting around a family and eating Easter eggs. You know, it's going to bring us all together and bring that love frequency up.
So for the people who, for anyone who wants to amplify their connection with chocolate or cacao, do you have any suggestions with what people may want to be looking out for when they're going to buy their chocolate from this moment onwards? Is there anything that they should look for or perhaps should stay away from? You know, we're kind of getting into the territory of good and bad, and you know, some chocolates are created perhaps not with, well, with different intentions. Then we're talking about the sugar and the milk, but like from your perspective, like if someone wants to deepen their relationship and try and source out more high quality chocolate, you've mentioned the bean to bar versus the raw, but any other specifics that we could look out for?
I think it's an individual experience. So to give a general one, I feel like wouldn't do it justice. Because at the same time, I'd say to someone who really likes eating arrows, even though it's made by Nestle, who like convince African mothers to do their powder formula instead of breastfeeding, weird things like that. It's like, still, if that's your favorite thing, then add intention to it and pay attention to the dosage that you're going to have. So I don't know if I can advise any what else would it look to? I guess for health reasons and for quality of really connecting in with cacao, it's to really look for the higher quality cacao. So 70 and above is good, and especially if you are going to bean to bar store and you're going to buy a few different flavors, get them all of the same percentage so you can really taste the differences. And that's why they do use sugar, because then you can taste, oh, this one from Guatemala has these flavors and this one from Peru has these flavors. So that would be bean to bar. As far as like the healthier chocolates, the ones that I have seen that I do like, there's chocolate yogi, which theirs is all vegan. These are all vegan ones. They've just come out with a new range, which is really delicious, including like a white milk one. The Loco Love, which I mentioned before, they've got a whole range of, their slabs are good. I really like their one with lion's mane in it. And that's also a really good one. And vibrationally and alchemically, like the colors and the packaging is all great. I don't often buy chocolate, but I can see around me whose chocolate people are eating. Those would be the ones that I'm seeing the most within our culture of people tapping in.
And then of course there's going to be and then of course there's the listeners who are vibing what you have to say and thinking, well, how do I get some of Kyle's chocolate? Is there some sort of pre-screening process that people have to go through to be inducted into the secret chocolate society?
Yeah, there is. And I've just actually opened up some more places, because I keep it to a fairly manageable size. And it's really for people who are interested in good chocolate and ritual and interested in like plants. So they are sent out every quarter. So for solstice and equinoxes, they're ritual boxes. So a box essentially is aimed to get you through to the next celebration, quarterly celebration. It's fun. There's always this pause around the entry point of the Secret Chocolate Society. I guess ways that people could get more information is to just connect with me on Instagram or Facebook and send me a message and say, I was listening to bird songs and I'm curious to know more about the Secret Chocolate Society. And in that context, we can open up a little bit of a chat, and I can send a link. And if there is available spaces, then I'm happy for people to come into that container. So I'm opening up more and more, because the more I'm around, people are like, how do you get it? How do you get it? And it's not really an exclusive thing. It is just more of that sacred thing that I know that when I send my chocolate out to people, when they get it, they love it, and they keep it. And when they give it to people, they make sure those people are present when they're eating it. And that's very different to the chocolate I was making before. I made raw chocolate back in 2013 to 2016, and I went to like 60 stores around Australia and just the feedback from people and the questions that people are asking, and no one even realizing the amount of intention that was going into the bars. At the end of it, I lost track of why I was doing what I was doing, and that's why I gave that up. But then it resurfaced in another way, like chocolate. When chocolate calls you in, it just keeps, or when your purpose calls in. So it is really about knowing that when the people get the boxes, that they're ready in reverence of what's in the box. I'm not here to prove myself to anyone in any way. It's like, really, it is a beautiful process. But thanks for asking, and I am happy to have conversations, and I'm opening more and more to people being like, hey, how do I get in the Secret Chocolate Society? And I can, send a few voice notes, and we can check in.
Cool.
But it really is for people that are interested in the plants and ritual and like good chocolate, because it is a darker chocolate as well.
Cool. Well, I will have those links to your social profiles in the show notes to this episode, medicinepath.net/birdsong, for those of you who are tuning in. And people can also tune in with you directly through your website as well, which is, what is that, karllaz.com?
Yep, Karllaz, KYLELAZ.com.
Yep. Cool. Yep, I'll have all that in the show notes along with any other resources. But look, before we kind of start to wrap things up, we've got to talk about the chocolate dreaming rituals. And I know you've also got your another offering that you've been doing online. I don't know if you want to speak about that here, the 5-week elemental living program as well. But yeah, give us the rundown on the chocolate dreaming rituals, man, and your own personal ritualistic kind of use and some insight into that.
Sure, yeah, thanks, man. So the chocolate dreaming, like you've heard me say it a bit in this, like I refer to it as my dreaming. It's a way that dreaming is really something that's receptive to everyone as well. Because when we're dreaming, we can all relate in a safe space. Oh, I had a dream the other night, and it's a sense of creation opposed to this deep ceremony or something like that. And really, like the dreaming, I often wonder, like, are we dreaming now? Or are we, well, like, was I dreaming before when I was asleep? Like, and what's the difference between a dream and reality? So the chocolate dreaming is really dreaming our own dreams, so co-creating together. So again, the magic is in the process. And this is the process because chocolate has created this container for pretty much all the things I've been studying in the last 15 years into one container. It all makes sense. It all links back up. And that's what the chocolate dreaming is. It's the expression of that. It's a sequential process to connect deeper with cacao. So in short, there's five parts, there's 5 elements to the dreaming. So there's calling in the elements, which that also links in with the elemental living program that I've been running. And essentially it's connecting in with these elements of creation as a form of creating sacred space. So that's how we open up the space, by calling the elements in. And then there's the section of gnosis, which is the chocolate wisdom. So some key sharings on the wisdom of chocolate to really bring it into that enchantment phase. And also the wisdom allows us to drop in more when we have some information about what we're having. It forms us into alignment with it. And then there is the praxis, which is the ritual, which in and of itself is elemental again, which is why I'm at the moment really putting calls out for people to dream with me in the elemental space, to call in the elements more and vibe with it, because it amplifies all the processes. But that ritual in and of itself is essentially using the 5 elements of creation, so connecting in with them, and our 5 senses. So we have ether, air, fire, water, and earth, and we have sound, touch, vision, taste, and smell. So within that, in short, we start by smell the chocolate, then we taste the chocolate, then we visualize our dreaming, then we feel our dreaming, and then we listen to what wants to happen. That's a really short version, simplistic of, even at home when people get chocolate, if you follow that process, you're activating your senses, and your senses are the gateway between our inner and outer worlds. And from that ritual part of consuming it, then we go into the transformation and integration space, which is really where it's the intellectus. It's where all that we've done before is now flowing through us, and we allow it to have its own divine expression through us, whether that's through listening to sound or doing breath work or dancing. It's in this phase that we integrate and transform. We allow it to all move through us. And then after the fifth is the gratitude fractal. So really closing the ceremony with gratitude, with those seeds of gratitude, because the more we're grateful, the more we have to be grateful for. So it is this fractal of like, I'm grateful and I have more to be grateful for. And then I'm grateful and there's more to be grateful for. And that essentially goes into the field of our dreaming and amplifies the dream that we're dreaming, because now we have more to be grateful for. And there's more chance of our dreaming being what we're grateful for as it manifests. So that's essentially the dreaming process. And there's different ways that we flow in with it. And with what I teach people the skills to do and to harness, to be able to add their own flavor to it as well. So it is created as something that I do share. And then I also teach people how they can utilize that structure in their own divine expression to play with it. So yeah, that's a bit about the dreaming, man. And that can also be done really quickly if you just want to eat a piece of chocolate quickly, or it can span out over a whole night, or yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but have I seen you hold chocolate dreaming-esque retreats?
Yes, I have.
So is this something that you still offer?
This is something that I haven't offered since the whole COVID piece. But it is something in 2021 that definitely is coming back into to have more gatherings. And I do for people who are interested, I do also have the five elements online is a nice just introduction into connecting with the elements. It is a transformation journey in and of itself. It's where I recommend people start, because once we have an agreement or agreed understanding of those elements, everything else that I do is amplified, because those elements are the elements that are used in pretty much every tradition around the world. And then into the chocolate dreaming initiation, which is a 3-month initiation with multiple day immersions as well. So that's something coming in 2021 for the right people, mainly coaches and healers and facilitators who would like to take these tools of sound and breath and cacao into their communities, really. So the 1-day retreats or the elemental retreats, there probably will be some more coming in 2021. But at the moment there's not. I'm mainly just wanting to connect on that online base first, because there's so much we can do on that alignment before we meet in person as well.
Yeah, great. So I would just suggest for people to reach out and get in contact with you via social media and follow along for all the updates and keep an eye on that.
Yeah, thanks, man. That'd be great. Yeah, I'd love anyone who's in harmony with the wisdom that you're sharing. We've been in alignment to definitely work together, and I'd love to dream. Everything that I do, I'm doing because I'm part of that dreaming as well. So the program is a programming of creation, and I join in. That's the only reason it's online, and I started as a group thing, so we're all in the container together. So yeah,
awesome, man. Well, look, as we close up, then I would love to ask you, what do you feel like your overarching mission and your message is?
My overarching message, I'd say it does come down to connection, like deepening our connection with ourselves and the earth. And I mean, it's a big arch, but there's so many different ways of doing it, but that's what it really comes down to. And I feel that's also that underlining message of what cacao is here to do as well, to remind us that we're connecting to the earth is a way that we don't have to take from others, remembering that we have this divine connection with this planet that we're on. And then self is like we have all the answers, and there's a deeper journey within. So the overarching message is that, yeah, that deeper connection with self and the earth.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap things up, brother.
Great, brother. Thanks so much, man. That was great fun.
Yeah, it was great fun. So before we close up, I know I just asked you what your overarching mission slash message is. Is there any final words that you want to leave our listeners, viewers with in regards to the chocolate dreaming? Any reflections, insights, words of wisdom as a parting gift?
First, I'd just like to thank you for doing this work, and it's been great chatting with you, man. And for anyone who's listening, thanks for listening. I think there's just that one piece of like when we dream by ourselves, that in itself is so tasty, right? But when we dream together, the richness of this reality is so much greater. So it's just to remember that, like dream by yourself, but then also align with people that are dreaming the same dream, because that's where things get really juicy and tasty. And yeah, that would be my final words. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, boom. Love it, brother. Yeah, thanks again, mate. Appreciate it.
Awesome, brother. Take care. Big love, man.